Hi everyone, welcome back to Babbling Irons. You have me, you have Sloth here today, talking about the upcoming quarterfinal against KAA, Gent, not Genk, as it was thought before. But yeah, sit back and we're gonna go into the game and talk about the things we need to be worried about, things that we should be positive about, and hopefully we'll see us get a nice, comfortable win. But we'll discuss that further in just a moment. Don't know what happened there. It went round twice, but it's all good. But yeah, Scott, how are you feeling? It's been an interesting, say, couple of weeks and 3 games for us recently. So yeah, how are you feeling?
I feel all right. I think I'm looking at it from a very different perspective from you by all accounts, but I'm feeling pretty positive when we go into Europe. The performances we've shown in the league, obviously they've tightened up last week, but I think our one kind of saving grace is that apart from Nice, I think there isn't a side of the quality of Newcastle in there, so I don't think we're going to get a thumping from anyone. The only issue is there are 1 or 2 outstanding players, and one which we will cover today, and you already covered the other day. But I go into it feeling pretty confident. I think there are a couple of things that I think we'll need to be wary of. But I just I'm trying to separate the Europa Conference League and the Premier League form or performances entirely. And I do think there's been some positive sort of rumours around the club that are kind of helping me with things at the moment. I think particularly that we could part ways regardless at the end of the season with Moyes. I think that's a positive, but also just kind of the sort of players we're being linked with, particularly today. I saw a couple of championship shouts, and I think there's some real positives about.
No, I totally agree. And Eastside views. Yeah, I don't blame you for forgetting that we still had the Europa Conference League after what we've had. And again, very good point. As an Alkmaar, that no mugs potentially could
Very
be
true.
A team that we have to face if we get through this round. And lastly, thank you very much. Really appreciate that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, as you say, like, the league form has been dismal. That's to put it politely. I wasn't as enthused as I've seen some accounts have been about us with the 4-4-2. I think it was great to see we actually tried something different tactically. That was good. I was actually impressed with that. He also made some early subs, made the right subs despite what the people at the ground thought. He made the right subs because we needed that. So, but again, everyone has the right to voice their opinion. And I just think, to be fair, we were terrible on the ball, and defensively, I still think there was massive holes. But we got the win, and that's a good thing to come into this game. Now, talking of this game, this team is no mugs by any stretch of imagination. I think there's been a bit of a generalisation by some fans that because this is a team from the Belgian league, it's going to be a bit of a doddle, because we have in the past, we beat Genk, obviously, who I believe are top of the leagues at the moment in Belgium.
And Anderlecht.
Yeah, we beat Anderlecht as well. So I think there's a bit of for a lack of a better term, maybe a bit of smugness in our fan base as to this team. But I think we underestimate our peril, much like for me, there are elements of Frankfurt in this game. When I look at the way they set up and look at some aspects of how they play, it feels like that type of banana skin where overconfidence, I think, is maybe a thing that could see us stumble, at least in the first leg, if we are not careful. I don't know how you feel.
I think the one kind of big difference between the sides we've played previously from Belgium is that Gent actually have a real kind of out and out striker. They have a forward as opposed to, you know, Onuachu, who I've got to say was one of the worst strikers I've ever seen against us. And I was amazed that Southampton paid what they did for him. No, it's not a disrespect to him. I just, you know, I was really surprised by that. And I thought he was totally inept against us. And also, you know, when we played Anderlecht, you know, they had Silva up top.
Fabio.
And he was pretty anonymous. Like he didn't really do much. So in Auburn, they have someone who is actually a real focal point and a real talent. And I think our right-hand side is going to have to be on it, because they have a great link up with Malik Fofana and Auburn. So it's going to be something that I think if we turn up and play well, I think we should win comfortably. I don't mean that in any disrespect, but we should win comfortably. I wouldn't be surprised if we concede, especially if we concede first. But I do think that with the quality we have, we should be winning.
Yep. No, 100%. And, you know, East End Views makes a valid point in that in Europe, we've seemed far more comfortable in possession. We seem to work the ball much more. And yes, you're correct. One of the Fofanas is there. He is currently the left winger, depending on how you want to term it. But yeah, he plays on the left-hand side for the guys as well. But yeah, it's one of those things. We do seem to be better in Europe. Obviously against Larnaca, especially in the home leg, those lads really kind of made a point, I think. Hasn't really paid much dividends to Lanzini, despite playing well. Obviously, for Ornals, we've seen sparingly, but again, sparingly, same with Downs. But I haven't prepared a kind of an expected lineup this time around. But I kind of get the feeling, you know, Areola again will likely play because he seems to be our cup goalkeeper. Defence, I think, is going to be the interesting one, because I would assume he might go almost full strength. But a part of me feels maybe because of Arsenal is around the corner, he might maybe go for Kehrer at right back. I would assume maybe Ogbonna is going to go in there as well. So it might be then Zuma and Ogbonna. But having said that, if he's maybe looking at using Ogbonna against Arsenal, then, you know, then that probably means Agard is coming in. Then on the left-hand side, you'd probably argue again it's Cresswell. But again, playing Arsenal. So he may decide now that he's going completely in the old guard way. So it may just be back to Emerson, back in Europa, not in the Premier League, because he's now going to stick to the old guard, and the likes of Cresswell now will be playing a lot more in the Premier League. Same with Ogbonna. I think we might see some of our summer signings ostracised now from the team to the end of the season, in all honesty. I just get that feeling. Maybe Bar Paqueta, but I think again in midfield, I think in this game, personally, I would be looking at going for a midfield three again, as we have, but with Downs, Lanzini and Fornals in there. So again, it's good ball retention, players that can get on the ball. I think Downs would probably relish the challenge to be essentially follow Hyung Suk around the pitch and just get him off the ball. And then obviously in the flanks, there's not much we can do there, but I would probably drop Bowen, not because he's played badly, but I think we need to rest him for Arsenal.
Yeah.
And play Cornet on the right-hand side, which means you only have Ben Rama to play. And then up top, you know, I think you probably go for Antonio, because I think Ings is going to play. The other alternative, which is incredibly unlikely, is Mubama gets an opportunity. I don't think he would start. I don't think he may be on the bench, but I think it would be incredibly brave and I would say also unrealistic view that he would play.
I think it's one of those things that I think he's done enough, but how often have we seen players who've done enough not get picked.
Yeah.
And I think, it would be more than justified if Moyes started him and said, look, I like the young lad. I think he's got a lot of talent, and we'll see how he gets on in the first half. If he's looking a bit lost, if he's looking out of his depth, then throw Antonio on for the next 45. I do think it's not a game that I would take lightly in the sense of like play the kids, but I think when we look at the league and who we've got next, obviously with Arsenal coming up, it is a game that I do think we should be resting players, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he put if he just played Rice, Bowen, and Ings just because, and
it would be very much like Moyes to essentially, I'm going to blitz now. It's going to be the same team, attack, defense, to go through that American football kind of approach. But it's going to be like those guys.
If it is though, I think we win comfortably. I think we should be winning about 2 or 3. So if he does do that, it's almost like, would he risk, a bit of a dead rubber in the first leg, and the threat of an away goal for Gent when they come to us, or would he just play a strong team and say, go out here, finish the tie, and at the home leg, we'll see what happens?
Yeah, I think maybe with Arsenal literally coming around the corner, and it's obviously on Sunday, that I kind of get the feeling he may rotate it a little. Also, I'm basing that kind of on his words as well. We're saying that he may have to put the league above Europa. He's obviously not said that he's not going to go for Europa, but he's kind of intimating that it's not necessarily going to be full strength team. But then, in all honesty, we haven't really seen the full strength team the whole way through the competition. So I don't think we necessarily need to change much from our Europa League team anyway. I think the question ultimately becomes, does Souček go in that midfield? Because he seems to play every game, regardless of performance. But it's probably one that I wouldn't actually mind. I probably would play in this game if we was talking around, if he is going to play him as a defensive midfielder and just allow the others to press forward. Because it's one thing that Gent do not really, as a weakness, one of the things that they have is their long ball game. They don't have the strikers who are dominant in the air. Hyung-suk as well isn't exactly a player who's getting blessed aerially. So if we essentially say we're going to kind of stop you coming down the wings and we're going to kind of push up on your centre-backs and cut off those lines to your midfield, then them playing a long ball game plays into our hands because we have strong defenders in the air. And also, if you've got Souček sitting just in front, he's by and large not going to lose many headers to their front three. So that's one of the, I guess, the advantages if you did play Souček is if they do start playing a long ball game, it's probably a little bit unlikely. It's not really within them to do that. But again, if you limit space, you give them only one option. But how would you approach the lineup yourself? If you was to be picking it, how would you kind of look to line up?
I mean, with our centre backs, I would probably play Aguerd. I'd probably start him, if not just to deal with the pace of Orban. And I think, again, he's going to deal with him aerially. He's going to deal with him pace-wise. And it will just be a case of, I tweeted a couple of days ago that he's made more mistakes in the past few games than I've seen from him in many seasons. And I know the Premier League is a different league to France in terms of like the intensity, but I can't see him having that problem with Gent. And
it's also a slower pace, isn't it? Whenever you look at Europa League, the pace is much slower than what we see in the Premier League. So you do get more time in possession and out of possession to essentially deal with and assess what's happening.
So I do think that there's that's definitely the strong option. And, you can say to Aguerd, if you put in a good performance here, you're in the running for the Arsenal game. I really wouldn't be surprised if Moyes was going to go for a 3 at the back approach with Aguerd as that extra man. But I think I'd probably play Johnson on the right back spot. As I said, just to help with Fofana and Orban's link up, help cover that right hand side against pace. And not that Soufal's kind of at risk of that. I just think Fofana would have the beating of him a couple of times, and that could potentially that can lead to goals. When you've got a player in the form of Orban, then it's a real danger. So I think we'll probably go back to Emerson as a cut player, maybe Johnson at right back. I would start Aguerd, and as you say, Ariola's a safe bet for a cup keeper. But the problem is my choices and what Moyes seems to do is entirely different mindsets. And how many times have we said how good Flynn Downs looks on the ball, or how competent he looks, and particularly in Europe, he looks ready to step up and be part of the first 11 at times. But is he going to get picked at the end of the day? It's a sad reality. I wouldn't bet against Fornal starting on the left wing, just to give us a bit more of a workhorse approach. But again, it's whether he keeps players fresh for the Arsenal game and what he wants to do.
Yeah, no, exactly. I tend to agree. It's one of those, as you say, you kind of second guess yourself because you go for what you would do, but then you try and think about what Moyes would go for, and then that's where then all falls over, because his language at the moment is very contradictory. And obviously, as fans, we want to see us win the competition. This is a legitimate competition to win. Also, we also want to see us safe in the league, but I think we're at the moment a little bit at loggerheads as to where we are. So I think that this first leg, if all goes well, then obviously I think you'll see Moyes commit to it. I think if we don't have a great game, I could potentially see him then in the return leg, because the game after that I think is Bournemouth, then being, well, that's more important than this second leg that can take us through into the semi-finals. So I think we're in a bit of a catch-22 at the moment, that what happens in Europa League conference actually is going to hinge on this one game, because obviously we do have Arsenal, which isn't necessarily one we expected to win. So we may see maybe more of the first team to stay in this one to try and win it outright in this round. But again, it's Moyes at the moment. I don't really know where his mind is going to sway and what he's going to kind of do with it. I guess we have to say he has been spot on so far in Europe. It's 11 wins out of 11 games. I think we're now the record holder in the competition. Obviously, it's only in its second year, but we have the record number of wins in the tournament so far, and consecutive wins as well. So
I think we also have the longest English record in terms of unbeaten run, which is
exactly. Weird way you look at it. I know people say it's a terrible competition, but you've got to win what's in front of you. But talking about what's in front of us, obviously I've done a piece on one of their star players, but yeah, it'd be interesting to get your take on how they play, the strengths that they have, and the things that we need to kind of be wary of going into the game.
Well, I mean, one thing that they do have is they have a lot of pace, and I've mentioned them both already, but Fofana and Orban are the two real sort of danger men that we need to look out for. Orban is in incredible form at the moment, and he is someone that I've mentioned a few times that I'd like at West Ham, particularly at the end of the season. I think he's essentially a less physical but just as strong Antonio, quicker, and I mean, transfer marked have him down as left-footed, but really I've seen no difference between his left foot and his right foot. He seems to be able to be really comfortable finishing with either. and he moves the ball really well. He's a player who can shift it really quickly, unleash a shot, and I think if we're not ready, he can cause, like, he could easily get a yard on someone like Ogbonna, just in terms of pace. But with Aguerd, I think he'd be a lot more comfortable with him. You mentioned that they're not, perhaps aerially blessed. They do move the ball quite well on the ground. They do look for those outlets out wide because they do have that pace. But to be honest, I think as long as we can nullify Auburn, we should be pretty comfortable. They're not the most solid at the back. We've already seen them concede goals in this competition, but as I said, Auburn is the real danger man, and I would be really surprised if he's still at them come next season. He's just he's a very strange player because if you look at his journey, it's kind of astronomical, and he was almost
loan deal, wasn't it, from Nigeria to, I think it was at the time, second division team in Norway. Had an absolute stormer in Norway. I think this year he had 16 goals in 19 games, or 19 goals in 16 appearances. One of those combinations, which is incredible regardless. And it's 9 in 8 for them in the league. And there's a couple of hat-tricks. He scored a hat-trick in the last round again. And the hat-trick as well in the dismantling of Başak Şehir was pretty good.
His second goal is unstoppable. It's absolutely. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favour and check out his hat-trick. And he just looks like a complete forward. So I do think that he is the real danger man. But it's one of those things where if we're playing well, it's a huge step up to play against Turkish, Belgium centre backs, and then to play against Premier League centre backs. So it's no disrespect to either league, but I do think if we are on it, we'll keep him quiet.
No, I tend to agree, and it's one of those players that is, as we've said, he's blessed with pace. He does link quite well with Kuipers and Heung-suk, who are kind of their front three. Heung-suk kind of plays more in a kind of free role just behind the strikers, and they're always really close together. So something we have to be mindful of if we are playing a three in midfield, that we are going to have one player who's going to always have to be looking over his shoulder, because that's their go-to move, is to get it to one of those twos and then try and get it out into the flanks. As we say, they're not really going to whip the ball into the area. They're going to try and do some cutbacks. And Auburn is the type of player you just can't give any space in the area, because left foot, right foot, he's very, very clean when he strikes the ball, and it doesn't need much space either. And he can shoot without much backlift. It's, I think, what sometimes people think Antonio is when they talk about how his reactions are in around the area and his pace and that ability just to shoot. He is absolute instincts of a striker. He knows when to shoot, and for the £3 million that they bought him for, he's going to be an absolute snip, because in the summer they're easily going to be able to get 15 to 20, and they'll probably even be able to ask for more, to be honest, because
I'm pretty sure there's a quote from the Gent manager basically saying, like, we signed him as a backup forward, and we weren't ready we weren't sure if he was ready to take the step up into the first team. But the first training session that we had, we just knew he had to go pretty much straight in, and it was just a matter of fitness. I think he's the first proper centre forward we'll have faced in the competition, so I'd be really surprised if we aren't pretty much honing in on him. To be honest, it's that kind of that level of threat, and as I said, he's the first proper centre forward we've had to play. So if our defenders aren't aware of that, or they aren't as kind of respectful as they should be, then we will see kind of how clinical he can be.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is often with pace, we always say that players like to drop off and you need to be wary, but he's one of those that his pace is such an asset that actually normally you'd want that player, maybe you drop off and give him a yard and then you kind of catch him on the turn. He's one of those players that actually, if you get tighter to him, his overall game sometimes is not as consistent as he is, say, in and around the area, that his layoffs sometimes are a bit loose. He tries to play it a bit too quickly rather than hold the ball. So if we get in and around him a lot quicker, then we do potentially limit what he does. Obviously, there is, as always, if he does manage to get that pass, then he does have the ability to run in. But I think it's one of those games where we have to be aggressive. And it's all, again, we've not really played against two centre forwards throughout the tournament. Technically going to be free with Wei Hyung-suk plays as well. I do think Gent are going to be fairly defensive. I think they're going to try and do that. But again, the defenders, whilst they're not the best always at defending, as you rightly say, they can kind of switch off and leave kind of spaces. And if we're going to use our wingers for correctly and bring them much closer inside and essentially go a 3-on-3 with their centre backs and then push our fullbacks up, then we could really get some joy against them, because there's not any cover at all in the wings for Gent. And if we've got three in midfield, we're technically going to cover their three. If we use our fullbacks properly, then we can then pin back their back five. Really, we can try and pin them back a lot more, and really just then go one on one in that attacking third, which is a brave option, but it's something I think we probably should do, because if we can limit their defense from playing out and they have to play long, we are going to cause them issues in terms of ball retention. We stand off them. Their defenders are pretty tidy in possession, so they can play through us. So I think that's the thing that we've got to be aware of. Like, we stood off against Fulham, and a couple of times it took 2 or 3 passes to even get them in a position to shoot, and it was not hard to play through. So if we do that, kind of sit back, hold shape, I do think we're going to play into Gent's. I think we're going to play into their hands, really. And I think they're going to gain more confidence, and they probably are going to come out. Now, that could be the death of them if they come out a bit, because it will create space for us. But I don't think we should be taking the game lightly. Some of the comments I've seen, I think, is maybe being a bit too disingenuous, and just looking at what we've done so far against teams from Belgium in the last couple of seasons, that it's just kind of been seen as we're into the next round before we've even kicked a ball in anger. So, yeah, I do think we need to be vigilant, because that front three of Gent, I think, will give us a game, especially if we give them enough time with the ball. I do then think that they will grow into it and they'll get more confident. And if we allow them the confidence, then we're going to put ourselves against it, because we don't have much at the moment. So any kind of, I guess, kick to the teeth in the game is going to probably impact us quite heavily and maybe make them more buoyant. So I think we do have to be quite wary.
I think as well, a lot of people like to point and say about Antonio and how he's unlike a lot of strikers in Europe, whereas the thing about the Belgian league is there are numerous forwards who have that sort of physicality and speed.
I think there's a lot of Antonios, really. I think when you look around the leagues, the Bundesliga had a good few. Obviously, there's Mbolo is the most obvious. As you say, Belgium have got a few. Obviously, Orban's fairly similar. Ligue 1 has obviously got a few as well. Look at Terra Moffi. So I think it's also a myth. There isn't many Antonios out there. It's just people not necessarily looking in those right places to see them.
I think it's just going to be a case of, I don't think the defenders won't know how to play against him. Again, I think that's another kind of cliche that you have to be wary of. But if he's on it, he'll cause them nightmares. But it's the same sort of thing as Boniface, where big physicality, big pace, and will cause nightmares for defence with his pressing. But we've also not really seen that much of that Antonio this season. If he's up for it and he starts, then brilliant. I think he will really give them a game, but it's going to be something that Gent are very aware of and will know how to play against.
Yeah, do you think Moyes is going to go to the 4-4-2 like he did against Fulham, or do you think he's going to go with the kind of tried and trusted 4-3-3? I know you mentioned about maybe 3 at the back, but do you think he's going to maybe go for more tried and tested formations that he's had so far?
I think he'd probably go tried and tested, to be honest. I'd be very surprised if he went 4-4-2 and played 2 up top, just because I think he'll want to keep a clean sheet, but also I think he'll also have Arsenal in mind. And Arsenal are going to want to make a statement when they play against us. They're going to want to make sure that they keep the lead they have in the title race. So I kind of, while I understand what Moyes is saying, I think you've almost got to look at this game and say, look, they're the league leaders. We're going to go hard in this game and make a statement, get ourselves over the line. And if we do that, then you've earned yourself a bit of stead for Arsenal. You can be in contention to start, but essentially it's a game we need to be looking at with a different mindset, because I wouldn't quite call it a write-off, just because I'm always somewhat optimistic, even though I don't display it much on here. But I think it's one of those where anything can happen. If Liverpool can be on the run they're having, and Bournemouth can make them can beat them at home, then we can beat Arsenal at our place. And it's got to be a big question for Moyes. If he does go weak for this game and we find ourselves goals behind, I think the fans will be asking a lot of questions, particularly if we lose against Arsenal heavily, or just if we drop points against Arsenal. People will be furious that he's put the cup competition at risk.
We blowed this one because we saw it against in Europa League, where people were essentially asking to throw Premier League games to focus on Europa League, and he maybe did that a little bit too late in a couple of rounds because the boys looked quite tired. But I would say this year he's rotated a lot more, so maybe he did learn, I think, some lessons from last season and has looked to rotate a little bit. But I think, as you say, if we go with a weak team and it doesn't go to plan and we don't maybe come away with at least a draw, then to say there will be questions is an understatement. I think it's going to be, I can almost see the tweets now that people saying it's an embarrassment that we drew or even that we lost to Gent. You just know that will be the kind of the tone, the atmosphere. Some respects that will be bang on right, because we, as a Premier League team, with the money that we have and with the budget that we have, we should not be struggling against the smaller teams. And I know that sounds really disrespectful. It's not meant to be disrespectful. It's just the fact that, by and large, their big signing, obviously they paid only £3 million for him to be a backup, as you say, but turns out to be now their star striker. But that's the levels that we talk about. We talk about buying a backup, which arguably is Danny Ings, and that's £18 million. So the golf in monetary value, and you would argue the golf in individual qualities, are substantial, but it's whether we can play as a united team in which to go through it is the other question. And I think, the point that you've raised a couple of times, which I 100% agree with, but I don't believe it's in David Moyes' mind, is the meritocracy. That thing of, if you go out and play well against Gent and you perform, you're going to give me a selection headache. I don't think we've seen that. I think it's always been the kind of, he can paper over those performances because he can say, well, the competition level isn't very high. We're getting in the Premier League. I need to know that I'm getting the other guys are going to perform. So I would like to think that he will give that kind of level of meritocracy to him and state that you go out and make a performance of this and you really make a showing, then I have to consider you more for the end of the season. And let's face it, he needs those players on side. It's no good just having the old guard or a select few. He needs that whole squad because he doesn't know at which point he's going to need to call upon them. And if he has, 4 or 5 of them currently not happy with him because if they don't feel to get in games or he's not rewarding positive performances at youth level or even in training, then yeah, he's just making a rod for his own back and making it more difficult. But let's go into predictions for the game, Sloth. Let's kind of end it there. I think we both feel that it is a game that we should win. There are, levels within the Gent team that we should be wary of, such as Auburn. They're kind of front three. The defence, obviously, is something that we should be able to get in and around. But what are you going for? His views is going for a comfortable. I'm hoping he's saying a 2-0 win to us rather than 2-0 to Gent, but I'm pretty sure it's 2-0 to us. How do you feel about the game? What are you going for?
I'm going to go with 3-1 to us. I kind of get the feeling that we can see it out. If we go a goal behind, I think we'll have enough quality to get back on top, and also. If we have the likes of Cornet available off the bench, if we have Bowen off the bench, we should really be looking to score at least 2 goals. So
yeah. I think Hammerhead agrees with you. Not 3-1 as well.
I do think we will. I do think we will concede, but I think it could be a case of that's the wake-up call, and then we start to really get a foothold in the game.
Yeah, I can imagine us starting a little bit slow, if I'm completely honest, and trying to maybe feel our way through the game at first. I think that might be a mistake because I can imagine Gent are going to, whilst buoyed by their crowd are going to be up for it. I do think that they're maybe going to be a bit more reserved and a bit more pragmatic because it is us. I think probably the first 15, 20 minutes, it's going to be, the old conversation of keep it tight. Let's not give away anything silly. And then they're maybe going to open up as the game goes on. Because I think if we don't score early, they are going to grow in confidence and they are going to start to think that maybe we can take it to them. I do think when teams come to London Stadium, especially from the continent, I do think they struggle because the pitch is so big and so wide. Obviously, like Wembley, it's one of the bigger pitches in world football. And it's the same size as that. So I do think that's probably why we've done quite well when we've played at home in Europe, because I think a lot of those teams are not used to the size of the pitch and so on. So it's going to be, for me, I think it's going to be 2-1. I just don't have enough confidence in us going forward to really be clinical enough. I would like to see maybe Mbama, but that would only really be from the bench for me. I'd kind of like to see us go pretty strong in the first team. I'd like to try and get the game sewn up early. In my opinion, I would be wanting to be 2-0 up by half time, really. So then you can kind of look in that second half of maybe taking 1 or 2 out, maybe giving someone like Mbama a kind of reward for how well he's done. Even the likes of Kadua as well from the youth team, potentially on the right-hand side. So again, you can maybe play Cornet on the right for the first half, instead of Bowen, then move him to the left-hand side, get some proper minutes into his legs and then bring on someone like Kadua. But again, that's only if we're winning, 2-3-0, I think. I don't want to jeopardise this leg. I think if we win this leg, then that means the second leg we can maybe be a bit more, flippant in our selection and maybe a little bit less experienced.
I think you've got to go into it looking to secure a win, really looking to get a confident win, because if you go and you mess it up and you get a draw, then you're going into the Arsenal game with bloody hell, we've just drawn in Belgium, and that's not going to be good for anyone. So I do think we've really got to.
I think it's going to be half an eye on that return leg as well, because we need to win that one. We need to get through to the next round as well. So I think, as you say, it needs to kind of be sewn up, or at least come away with a victory to have something to hold on to. We don't want to be going into the next leg either 1-0 down or drawing. I think we have to winning's winning at the end of the day, and we need to keep that trend going. We've just beat Fulham. obviously the Newcastle game was an absolute terrible game, but before that, again, we wasn't necessarily amazing, but we beat Southampton. So we've got to just keep trying to churn it, keep it going. We can get the win against Gent, then that's maybe a little bit of a confidence booster going into the Arsenal game. Tough ask against Arsenal, but ultimately, I would take the win at this point tomorrow. Arsenal game, come what may. I don't think it's going to change anyone's opinion on Moyes. I don't think we're necessarily going to do what we would also really love to see and hope. But again, then it gives us, we can go into another Europa game with some confidence. And I think for me, getting through this round is very important. Then it's about, because once we're through this round, we'll also have had some important games. And then come the next round, we'll know, I guess, really how hard we need to push in the league, and whether it is at that point where we go, maybe it's time to actually think about sacrificing. At this time, I don't think it is, because if we get through the next two Premier League games, in particular, if we can beat Bournemouth in that game, Arsenal, I don't see as a win, obviously. But if we was to beat Bournemouth heading into there, you would probably say that really we maybe only need one more win, maybe, to stay up. Just with the way the league is, it probably doesn't look like it's going to be too high scoring. That will put us probably, 1 to 2 more wins after that game if we can beat Bournemouth. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, well, actually, if we only need 2 wins, potentially, there's probably 2 wins in those last few games. And I think beating Fulham will be a good thing for the lads, because it's all of a sudden they know that they can beat someone who technically is above them, better than them, according to the league, but also they can win away. And I think that's one of the things that they needed to get off their back. But yeah, I think we both feel relatively positive. Maybe we haven't sounded as upbeat as we have in other ones, but I think we both agree. I say 2-1, you think 3-1. I think we both could probably think that Auburn's going to be the one, if any, is going to score for them, because at the moment his scoring form is ridiculous. But yeah, it's an important game. It could set us up as fans to feel encouraged if we actually go into this game and we win it convincingly. If we do that, hopefully it will buoy the players that are not playing, and that's also then going to drive the lads who are playing more consistently as well. So it could be an all-round boost if we win this game, just because of what a win can do. A win breeds confidence, and confidence breeds better performances, hopefully. So, yeah, any final thoughts before we head off, Sloth?
I just think, go for it, get the confidence rolling, get yourself on a little run, and at least go into the Arsenal game off the back of a victory. And yeah, that's it. That's it, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, guys, everyone, thank you for watching. Again, please do like, please do subscribe. If you're new around here, please do subscribe. We're getting ever closer to 500, which is a small milestone, but milestone nonetheless that we want to get to. We're just about, I think, 4 or 5 away from that now. So it'd be great if we can get there. But as ever, thanks very much, guys, for tuning in. Thanks, everyone, for your comments. And as ever, Sloth, one last thing to do, and that is come on, you
Irons.